This podcast is not meant to be professional advice of any kind. It is meant to be informative and entertaining. If you make any changes to your life, see the appropriate professional before you do so. Hello and welcome to Super Age. My name is David Harry Stewart. I'm the founder of Ageist. At Super Age, we help you live better and become the best version of yourself. And who doesn't want a super age, right? Today's show is brought to you by Inside Tracker, the dashboard to your inner health. Go to insidetracker.com/ageist, save 20% on all their products. Today's show is also brought to you by Element, LMNT, my favorite electrolyte mix. It's what I put in my water in the morning, and it's what I put in my water at the gym. Go to drinkelement.com/ageist and receive a free 8-serving sample pack with your first purchase. Today's show is also brought to you by Timeline Nutrition, with their breakthrough product, MitoPure, the first clinically tested urolithin A supplement, which is showing tremendous results for mitochondrial health. Go to timelinenutrition.com/ageist, use the code ageist at checkout, and save 10% off your first order of MitoPure. Welcome to episode 110 of the Super Age Podcast. It is great to have you with us. This will be dropping on November the 23rd, 2022. It is a glorious day in the mountains of Utah today. It is full-on winter here, but it is so beautiful. The sun is out. Chilly in the morning, under 10, but warms up really nicely in the afternoons, mid-30s, which sounds kind of cold, but the sun is so intense here. It's really pretty comfortable, which is quite a contrast from where I grew up in a small farming community in western New York near Buffalo, which I think yesterday got something like 4 feet of snow, like in a day. When I was growing up, they used to run pictures of the sun in the newspaper so that people would, it was kind of a joke to be like, hey, this is what the sun looks like, because you don't see it from, middle of October through maybe the end of March. And snowed in meant that you had to jump out of the second-story window into a snowbank and sort of swim your way to the garage where you would get a shovel to dig out the front door. And it was not uncommon driving down, just like the street, just like my street, and there would be these walls of snow. It was like driving through a canyon of snow. So anyway, Utah's not like that. It's lovely here, and we've been up on the hill pretty much every day, which has been great. I'm doing this. Oh my gosh, I've been coerced into doing the Masters ski racing program here in Park City. And I'm sort of taking this on as a bit of a challenge. I'll be 64 next week. This is not often an activity that a 64-year-old would take up. It's generally something that someone 12 would take up. But I sort of think like, hey, I'm going to give it a try. I fully anticipate to be the worst student in the class. I also anticipate to, a lot of humiliation, falling and such. But as long as I don't get hurt, I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be good. It's good, always good to learn something new. And, there's nothing like the brain stimulating activity of going quite quickly and having to navigate your body through space with some, physical consequences if you make a wrong move. It's not like a video game. So the way I've been running my days is I've been getting up, not terribly early, maybe like 6:15 or so. And then, I have my water, I check my heart rate variability, all that stuff, meditate, have some breakfast. And then while I'm eating my breakfast, I'll, respond to emails, all the stuff that needs to get taken care of right away. And then I put my gear on, and then I go up to the hill from, like 9 till 10:30. And then when I get back, my brain is still like fired up. This is something that we had a little discussion back a few weeks ago on the podcast with Dr. David Hardy, who's a functional neurologist. And I was mentioning that I'd sort of noticed this phenomenon in the past. And he says, oh yeah, because what happens is there are all these areas of the brain that are just lit up from this activity that you've done, and they don't shut down right away. So I work less hours, but I'm much more effective. It's not dissimilar to the feeling I get, although more long-lasting, than if I do cold exposure. If I get into a cold ice bath or something like that, my brain is all fired up. But that doesn't last that long. That'll last, maybe an hour or so. The ski thing, that lasts longer. That lasts most of the day. So anyway, moving on. This week, we have such a fascinating guest. We have Dr. Joe Maroon, and Joe's 82. He's a neurosurgeon at the University of Pittsburgh. He's a lifelong competitive athlete, and he's a concussion expert. And he is the first person that I've spoken to who has done the full hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment, which is otherwise called HBOT, at the Aviv Clinic. So as a concussion expert and as a neurosurgeon, I'm really excited to find out what his experiences are with this at Aviv. There are Aviv clinics around the world. There's one in Israel. I think there's one down in Florida. I think they're opening one in New York. And, they have been talked about, and there's quite a bit of data out there about how effective they are for reversing, things like dementia or any other sort of brain injury that one may have, including concussion. So we're going to get with Dr. Joe in just a minute after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by Timeline Nutrition and their breakthrough product, MitoPure. We all know how important mitochondrial energy is, and especially maintaining muscle and strength as we age. Urolithin A, which is found in MitoPure, has been clinically proven to increase muscle strength and endurance with no other changes in lifestyle. Urolithin A is essentially upgrading your body's cellular power grid, giving your body the energy it needs to optimize. We've been testing MitoPure here with the Super Age team, and our findings are aligned with those clinical studies. This is a product that I'm going to be taking every day for as long as I can. It's become an essential part of my routine. Timeline is offering listeners of this podcast 10% off your first order of MitoPure. Go to timelinenutrition.com/ageist and use the code AGEIST to get 10% off your order. That's TIMELINENUTRITION.com/ageist. Maybe check out their starter pack, which has all three formats, and let me know what you think. Today's show is also brought to you by Inside Tracker, the dashboard to your inner health. I've been using Inside Tracker for a few years now, and I'm a big fan of regularly doing blood tests to see, first of all, am I optimizing myself the way I think I am? And second of all, is there something going on that I need to know about right away? Back about 12, 13 years ago, I was in my routine physical, and suddenly, luckily, I had a physical at that point in time. My blood platelet level had plummeted, and I found myself in a hospital 3 weeks later. Now, it was only by luck that I happened to be having a physical at exactly that point. If I had had that physical maybe 3 months later, some really bad stuff could have happened. So Inside Tracker I use to help optimize where I'm at, and also to, make sure nothing bad's going on out there, to keep myself informed of what is actually going on in my body. The other thing I really like about Inside Tracker is, there are other blood tests out there that you can take, and it'll give you levels and say, like, okay, this is where you're at, in range, out of range. But it doesn't tell you, like, what to do about it. With Inside Tracker, it's a food-first program, supplements when needed, to help get you back on track. It gives you actions where you can actually impact what your inner health is. This is a great platform. This is not a replacement for seeing your physician, which you should do regularly, at least every year. This is an additive. I strongly recommend it. Go to insidetracker.com/ageist. Save 20% on all their products. Today's show is also brought to you by Element, the electrolyte mix that I've been using to stay hydrated and to keep my electrolytes in balance. I started placing Element electrolyte mix into my water after my workouts on the recommendation of a friend of mine who's a 50-time Ironman competitor. I told him that I was having a lot of trouble recovering from my workouts, and I thought it was my age. And it turned out it was my electrolytes. And once I started putting Element into my water, I noticed an incredible difference in my ability to recover from my workouts. It went from, truthfully, an hour or two to like 10 minutes. Because the problem was my electrolytes were off. Now what I do is I put Element in my water when I get up first thing in the morning. I also have it in my water that I drink during the day. And then, of course, at the gym, I make sure that there's Element in my water. And, of course, in my beloved sauna, the same thing, Element in the water. So it turns out that some of that brain fog and just muscle ache and sluggishness that I was feeling was not age-related. It was actually electrolyte-related. We talk a lot about hydration on this podcast, but the electrolyte mix within that water is really critical. Right now, Element is offering listeners of this podcast a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packets free with any Element order. It's a great way to try out all 8 flavors and share Element with a salty friend. Get yours at drinkelement.com/ages. This deal is only available through this link. You must go to drinklmnt.com/ages. We'll be leaving that link in the show notes too. After you check it out, let me know what you think about it. Did it make the change for you that it did for me? Hey, Joe, how are you doing today?
Excellent, David. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So let's sort of level set who you are and your age. You're 82, is that right?
Yes, I am.
That's extraordinary.
I used to say I'm in the fourth quarter. Now I'm in overtime, David.
Well, let's hope overtime's we got double and triple overtime coming.
Good.
And what's your day job?
I'm a neurosurgeon here at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Specialize in neurosurgery, and also very interested in sports medicine, concussions, and I've been with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the last 38 years as the team doctor and also medical director for WWE. I'm sure you watch Raw and SmackDown every Friday and Monday night.
Oh, I never miss it. Yeah.
And it's very, very entertaining and first class.
Wonderful. And you're also a lifelong athlete.
Pretty much.
When did you just did a triathlon, is that right?
Yeah, I've been competing in triathlons probably for the last 30 years, 25 years. I've competed in Hawaii 5 times in the Hawaiian Ironman and done 8 Ironman distance races and a whole lot of half Ironmans and Olympic and sprint distance races. I just finished a race in Chicago, the largest triathlon in the world, actually, in terms of numbers, and came in first in my age group. Just don't ask how many were in my age group.
We won't go there. So what I think is there's so much fascinating about you, Joe, we're going to sort of break this down a bit. I think of the, hundreds of people we've had on this podcast, you're the first medical science professional who's also an accomplished lifelong athlete. It's usually one or the other. We don't have to get both together.
Well, I've been in neurosurgery for 50 years now.
Yep.
And I actually went to Indiana University 100 years ago on a scholarship for football. It was Scholastic All-American there, and then continued everything, just keeping in shape until I had a midlife crisis about age 40. And within the course of a week, my father died of a heart attack. My family broke up, and I had to quit neurosurgery. And my father bequeathed to my mother a dilapidated, heavily mortgaged truck stop. And I left neurosurgery and literally worked in a truck stop, flipping burgers and filling up 18-wheelers for a year when I was 41 years old. And, we either adversity either kills us, as Nietzsche said, or makes us stronger. And I was able to literally running, biking, and swimming saved my life. I was in a depth of a very deep depression, and running, I started to run. The local banker said, let's go for a run. I said, I can't walk. I'm 20 pounds overweight. I made it around a high school track 4 times, said I'm finished, never again. But that night was the first night I slept in about 3 months. Mm-hmm. I went back the next day, did a 1.25 miles, and then the next and the next. And pretty soon I was cross-training, learning to swim, bike, entered into triathlons, and it's been part of my life for the last 40 years.
Wow. Love that. Um, so one of the things I want to dive right into is you're one of the first, probably the first person that I've spoken to who's done hyperbaric oxygen therapy at the Aviv Clinic. And first, tell us a little bit about the protocol that you did.
Well, David, for quite a few years, I've been taking care of patients, usually young athletes with concussions. And when all therapies failed, I've referred them for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I was amazed when the mothers and fathers would come back and say, "You've given me my son or daughter back." So I had a preliminary experience with it professionally. And then I decided I'm going to do this myself. So I went to the villages in Florida, to the Aviv Clinic, but I wanted to not at the end say, "Gee, I feel better." I wanted objective biomarkers to measure, to see if I actually improved or not. So I did a 2-hour neurocognitive test evaluation to evaluate my brain speed, memory, and processing of information. I did a cardiopulmonary fitness examination on a treadmill to exhaustion, measuring my cardiorespiratory function. I did MRIs of my brain, SPECT scans of my brain in terms of blood flow and structure. And I also did proteomics. I measured my proteasome with blood draw, as well as my telomeres. And I did a triathlon before and after. And then I published this in Progress in Neurology just a month or two ago in a paper entitled "The Difference Between 0 and 1." And at the conclusion, I did all the same tests again. And remarkably, and to my great satisfaction, my neurocognitive tests had significantly improved in terms of my memory and brain speed. My cardiopulmonary fitness, I increased my treadmill times decreased by about 9%. And the triathlon I did before and after, same environmental factors, I decreased my time by 23 minutes, which really was 9%, which was really, and I couldn't fake that. And my telomeres were also elongated by 100%. And you're familiar with the significance of telomeres and senescent cells, which also have been reported at the Aviv Clinic to be reduced with hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And the areas that improved in my brain function correlated with the increased blood flow on my SPECT scan and bold MRI. So I really became a believer. And subsequently, a paper that we presented at the NFL Combine this past year won the first place award for papers on the use of a hyperbaric oxygen therapy for post-concussion syndrome and PTSD. Subsequently, you could look the papers up for long COVID, which, as you know, in concussions, fogginess is one of the most common symptoms. The same with post-COVID. It's been used for Lyme's disease, chronic Lyme's disease, traumatic brain injury, and of course, wound healing, which is approved by the government and all agencies. So I think I'm actually giving a paper at the American College of Anti-Aging Medicine in December on hyperbaric oxygen, a renaissance, ? And I think properly applied, according to the protocols used in the villages, used at the Aviv Center, it has tremendous therapeutic potential, and we could discuss the physiology of it further if you would like.
Tell us a little bit about the protocol that you did there, what they're doing.
So the protocol, it was 5 days a week, 2 hours at a time in a multi-place chamber with oxygen breaks 3 times to induce hypoxia-inducible factor alpha 2 alpha. And over the course of 3 months. So I did 60 dives, 60 treatments, and measured all the parameters I mentioned before and after.
That's quite a commitment.
Well, it was a scientific experiment that I was happy to do on my own, and I was very impressed with the results. And the anti-inflammatory agents and my cytokines, NF-kappa B, these sorts of things that you can measure in your proteome, diminished precipitously. And I published this and showed the graphs in the paper. And you can't fake that. Your inflammatory markers precipitously dropped. And as you know, inflammation is the common genesis, not only of heart disease and arthritis, but also Alzheimer's disease and many other afflictions of age.
Just off the top of your head, what's the duration of the effect? Do you feel that this is a temporary effect, or
that's the appropriate question that I've asked also. So it's been a little over a year. I'm going to return for repeat testing.
Mm-hmm.
And see if I started to age again, in a sense, and measure my telomeres and my brain blood flow. And the studies out of Israel, Shai Afradi, the head of the institute, and also Amir Hadani, who's a brilliant neurosurgeon who co-authored most of the papers with Afradi, have demonstrated that the vascular endothelial growth factor, VEGF, and stem cells that are released lasts up to 12 to 16, 18 months. So I think it's a reasonable consideration. I may get a booster treatment myself this coming winter.
And with the Aviv protocol, were there any medications given additional to the HBOT?
No, but it is a complete program. Not only is it HBOT, but there's a nutritionist who goes over your nutrition. They have exercise physiologists who can put you in an exercise program. There are educational videos. And you also, in the chamber, do Mind HQ, Head HQ, neurocognitive stimulation while you're in the hyperoxygenated state to enhance brain function. So these are all adjuncts. It's not just getting into a monoplace chamber and lying there for 2 hours. It's a full program.
Interesting. I actually use that app, the Brain HQ app. I have it on my phone.
It drives me crazy.
It's really hard. Yeah, I guess that's the point, though, right? So I don't want to make this all about HBOT, but there's sort of two flavors of HBOT. There's the medical high pressure facilities with the oxygen breaks. And what oxygen breaks, my understanding is it's 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, something like that. But this is a medical high pressure facility. And then there are other sort of versions of HBOT that are lower pressure. I think they're 1.3 atmospheres, and you can use an oxygen condenser. Do you have any thoughts about those?
Well, clearly they're not as therapeutic as the protocol that we've just described. I think it depends why you're doing it. If it's for a therapeutic process like we're discussing, post-concussion syndrome, PTSD, long COVID, I would not recommend the soft bag chambers. Some people use them. Quite a few athletes have used them that I've known in the past over a long period of time in a fairly constant fashion on a daily basis, reporting some therapeutic effects, but it's not medical therapeutic.
Right. I actually put myself just to see what this was like. I once I'm in Utah and I went down to the University of Utah and they have they have the big multi-person chambers, and then they also have these small tubes. And so I had them like put me in the tube and just see what that was like. And, it's pretty boring.
Well, it is boring. And multi-place, as you know, I mean, you can have up to 14 people in the chamber, right. Well spaced, and also read, do games, right. this sort of thing. So the time goes much quicker.
So let's talk about what else you're interested in. I've heard some promising things about therapeutic plasma exchange.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. But let me digress just a minute on that. I'm here at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, and we have one of the top researchers in the world, Dr. Oscar Lopez, who is head of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And he recently was a principal investigator in a multinational, multi-center study using plasmapheresis in patients with PET scan documented Alzheimer's disease. And they reported this in the medical literature and with very strong peer-reviewed papers showing that they literally could arrest the deterioration of memory impairment in Alzheimer's disease patients with plasmapheresis. And as you know, plasmapheresis is just what you said, plasma exchange. And we know from animal studies that in rodents, plasma exchange taking plasma from a healthy young animal, putting it into an older, elderly animal, rejuvenates many of the youth markers in the older animal. So actually thinking of the Alzheimer's, in other words, if I, God forbid, had Alzheimer's now, there's really no really definitive treatment that is optimal. However, plasma exchange and plasmapheresis, according to the protocols and the studies that have been published, would be something I would consider very, very quickly in a situation like that.
So the original studies, I believe, were in the 60s with the 2 mice, and people call it the vampire treatment. But my understanding of current treatments here is you're not taking the blood from a younger person. You're using a machine to
clean your own blood.
Exactly. Yes.
That's correct. You're removing the inflammatory proteins in the plasma and substituting it with saline and albumin to, again, remove the inflammatory cytokines and proteases that lead to diseases of aging. And
I'm aware of the Alzheimer's studies. Have people been studying this in terms of other age-related diseases, arthritis or things like that?
Well, I know plasmapheresis is an accepted technique for patients with multiple sclerosis and various immunoglobulopathies and immune diseases, in which it's used prominently in most major centers across the United States and world. So to be applied to Alzheimer's disease was a unique intervention. And I would go back to our discussions of hyperbaric oxygen therapy too. Dr. Alfradi and his group in Tel Aviv have used hyperbaric oxygen therapy in elderly patients with dementia and have shown, again, an arrest of and slowing down of deterioration with that due to the factors that we were talking about. It increases the release of new stem cells. It increases vascular endothelial growth factor, which creates new blood supply to the brain and body. And it's also an anti-inflammatory. And as you know, in Alzheimer's disease, one of the main problems is the microglial inflammatory reaction that leads to deterioration of the brain with neurofibrillary tangles and amyloid plaque. So, all of these things are kind of intersecting in a way, in my opinion.
So we've hit on two of them, hyperbaric oxygen and therapeutic plasma exchange. What else are you seeing out there? What else is on your radar?
Well, I think the work of David Sinclair at Harvard, also with NAD and NMN, is something that's strongly should be considered, and also the use of metformin. You're familiar, of course, with the studies on diabetics who are on metformin, who
we had
live
near Barzilai.
longer,
yeah,
and this and that, and the study by Neil Barzilai at Mount Sinai, a very major study underway now, looking at the use of metformin as a anti-senescent agent, if you would. So those are important things.
We had Nir on the broadcast, and I've spoken to him about metformin. There is some controversy with metformin as the intersection. It seems, help me out on this, that if someone has a low level of activity, it perhaps is better than someone who's exercises all the time.
I really can't speak to that too much, because basically what it's doing. So what does metformin do? It enhances insulin sensitivity. So if you are like yourself, an expert skier and marathoner, and you already have your insulin sensitivity in a relatively in a good normal range. So are you doing much more by enhancing that with a pharmaceutical agent? I don't know the answer to that, but you're already in an optimal situation relative to your blood sugar, which is how it primarily works.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about, since we're talking a lot about the brain, let's talk about brain nutrition. Thoughts on omegas or other things that are essential for the brain?
I think, I've written a book entitled Square One, A Simple Guide to a Balanced Life. And maroonsquare1.com. It's available. And I discuss those factors that are generally agreed upon to enhance brain function. Number one, diet. Everything every day, 2-3 meals a day. What we ingest, we become to some extent. And intermittent fasting, of course, is something very popular now that is again a very powerful adjunct, I believe, to enhancing insulin sensitivity, elongating telomeres and reducing senescent cells, and helping with autophagy. So nutrition is number one. Number two is aerobic activity, at least 5 days a week, 30 to 45 minutes a day. And what does that do? When I was working in the truck stop and I started to run, I was literally rebooting my neurotransmitters. I was enhancing my serotonin without drugs. I was enhancing my acetylcholine, which improved my memory. My dopamine, I felt better. Priming my endocannabinoid system without THC and marijuana, my natural receptors, and also enhancing BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. And what does that do? It increases neuronogenesis, new brain cells, synaptogenesis, the connections between brain cells, and neuroplasticity. All that comes from aerobic activity. So in terms of brain preservation, hundreds of studies now show that long-term aerobic activity is the best booster for neurogenesis in the hippocampus, which ages and you lose your memory as you get older because of atrophy of the hippocampus where memory is stored. So those are the two. Then avoiding environmental factors that are toxic: alcohol, drugs, smoking, air, water pollution. The fourth is controlling stress, meditation, prayer, strong family unit. All reduce stress and hence the cortisol that gets elevated chronically, the adrenaline, the epinephrine that beats up our heart and our brain, and sleep. As you mentioned earlier, sleep is absolutely critical to preserving brain function because when we're asleep, our brain lymphatic system, or glymphatics, removes the detritus, the beta amyloid plaque that's formed during the day and helps preserve brain function. So those are the five, and then interaction with other people. Those are the 5 or 6 Alzheimer preventive and brain preservation factors that everyone should adhere to.
Absolutely. We had Dr. Rudy Tanzi on here a couple of times. Head of neurology. Rudy Tanzi.
Oh, yes.
Head of neurology at Mass General. And
Mass General. I've been, we presented together at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine.
Lovely guy.
Brilliant guy, great work. His science with organoids and all that is just first class.
Talk to him about his work with Aerosmith the next time you see him. And Johnny Depp and all that. That's like a whole other world. So you mentioned sleep. And Joe, you're 82.
Yep.
In general, as people age, they find sleep becomes a bit of a project. Tell me about your sleep routine. What are you doing to maximize your sleep?
Well, it's very interesting. My sleep patterns have changed despite all the above things that I do. I wake up at 4 or 5 after 4 or 5 hours of sleep, not infrequently, read for an hour or two and go back to sleep. And apparently that's not an unusual thing to do. But there's a device that I use called the Apollo watch, APOLLO, just like the god. And basically, it was designed by a psychiatrist here at the University of Pittsburgh. And it's the only wearable that I know that resets the homeostatic balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So basically, it's a device that you wear, and it's tuned to very specific frequencies. And basically, what it does through a retrograde fashion to the various nuclei in the brainstem, activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So you're very familiar with the yin and yang of sympathetic versus parasympathetic. So when you meditate, David, what are you doing? What system are you activating in your brain that results in the calmness, the slowness of pulse, the slowing of breathing, and the relaxation response that we strive for? Well, when we meditate, we're activating this parasympathetic nervous system. So basically, what this device does, created by Apollo Neuroscience, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, puts you in a meditative state without meditating. And they've published now quite a few studies on sleep using the Aura Ring as well, showing that it does facilitate sleep. And I use this frequently myself to enhance my sleep routine.
Fascinating. I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, you can Google it. Apollo
Out.
Neuroscience. David Rabin is the chief scientific officer and inventor. He'll send you one if you write to him.
Okay, I will do that. So I want to, one of your expertise, you've worked with football players, and you said, WME and people that are getting their heads hit frequently. And I just wanted to touch on this idea of something that I've heard quite a bit recently, the cumulative effects of concussions, that one concussion is one thing, 2 or 3 is a very different thing. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, probably the most significant contribution I've made in my whole career. I've written quite a few papers, over 300, 6 books. But the one thing that probably has made the biggest difference is the impact test, the immediate post-athletic cognitive test, which is a 20-minute PC-based, computer-based, online test now available that can be taken to assess memory, processing speed, and other factors, which has become the standard of care in the NFL, NHL, Major League Baseball, NASCAR, and over 23 million athletes have been tested and baselined with this. The significance of it is, for the first time, beginning 20 years ago, we had baseline studies on athletes before they had any head injuries, and we were able to not have them return to contact sports until they have completely returned to normal in terms of the neurocognition. So why is that so important? It's important because prior to 2000, 2002, 48% of NFL players returned to the same game after a concussion. We know that the brain is more vulnerable once it's been concussed to another head injury with less force, causing more significant impairment. So the whole goal is to prevent individuals from returning to the same activity until they're back to normal, their brain has recovered. So athletes who do go back before their brain have recovered are more susceptible to further damage. So we want to, again, document with biomarkers, objective biomarkers, not I feel better, what is going on with the individual's brain. If there are repetitive concussions before the brain has healed, I think clearly there's the possibility of progressive problems. What's unfortunately happened, in my opinion, is the pendulum has swung too far. Now, parents are keeping their kids out of sports, and we're creating a society of obese, overweight, lethargic kids who don't know what good physical activity is in terms of their development in their brain. And I think it's tragic the way the sensationalism and clickbait has occurred with the media in terms, instead of being objective about the situation, there's a lot of sensationalism because, as you know, what do people gravitate more, good news or bad news? And so the more sensational it is, the more people are going to click on it. And there's so much objective data that is overlooked because it's not, it doesn't reach the decibel level of sensationalism. So anyway, that's a short answer.
I believe in risk. I believe in challenge. I studied martial arts for 5 years. I got hit a lot. I hit a lot of people. it, there's something about that, about doing something that there are consequences. If you're playing a video game, there are very few consequences. Who cares? You don't get to the next level.
Unless you're eating Cheetos and drinking.
Yes.
And
those are consequences.
Salt, fat, and sugar.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Those are bad consequences. But I tend to agree that and this is sort of I think a generational thing for us that, our parents were fine with us. They maybe were like, oh gosh, you're all bloody again. Here, let me clean that up. And, today you get charged with like child abuse if like you let your kid do that. So,
I hate to tell you, but you and I are dinosaurs.
Well, I understand that dinosaurs get studied a lot, so that's all right. I'm okay with that. So I want to move to something personal for me that perhaps you can help me with. So I'm currently 63. I'll be 64 in a couple of weeks, and I've decided to take up this sort of Don Quixote adventure of ski racing, high performance ski racing, and my body's pretty fit. My brain definitely does not process things at the speed it did when I was 20. What could I do to increase my, to keep me from hitting something that I shouldn't hit?
Well, you already are doing it, and I think you know the answer to this. But the brain HQ that you're doing, the interaction between you and I right now is greatly enhancing my own neuroplasticity in bringing things out of my own hippocampus and executive cortex to focus on what we're talking about, to stay attuned, to stay attentive. So any of these kinds of things in your daily life, of course. And then, as you know, the adage, neurons that fire together, wire together. So by the activities and simulating your downhill skiing and doing it in a controlled fashion until you're training your brain in terms of the engrams and the encoding that's going on in your frontal lobes and your parietal lobes and your hippocampus, neurons that fire together, wire together. The more you do it, the more adept you're going to be, as long as you do it in a controlled fashion. You don't blow out your knees and hit a tree.
Those are both goals of mine, by the way. Tell me a little bit about, what you're doing. You're a very active athlete. What does your weekly training routine look like?
I try to do, at the present time, when I'm not really training for a specific event, I try to get in a minimum of an hour a day at least. Swim, bike, walk, jog. Can't run like I used to, of course, but I do stress myself on hills and then do weights, gym 2 to 3 times a week with resistance exercises to try to avoid sarcopenia, which happens with all of us beginning at 40. And my diet is primarily Mediterranean type diet, fruits, vegetables, a lot of vegetables, lean meat, a lot of salmon, fresh Arctic salmon, not farm-raised salmon, and farm-raised or, pasture-raised chicken, this sort of thing. Not too much beef at all, once a month maybe. A little bit of wine for the resveratrol, and still love coming to work. I'm at the hospital now. I working on some fascinating research projects having to do with the immunotherapy of cancer, and and also taking the impact test that we've created to doing neurocognitive testing on cancer patients. There's 20,000 new patients a year with cancer. Many of these have some neurocognitive impairment at time of diagnosis, chemo, brain, radiation. We want to institute testing before they're treated to get a baseline and know during and after if there's any significant impairment that's occurring from the therapeutic intervention. So we're looking into that as well. So I'm actually having a lot of fun. I teach residents, mentor residents. We have the best neurosurgical program in the country at the University of Pittsburgh with 28 residents and 25 faculty, 10,000 operations a year. So it's I'm very blessed. Let me put it that way.
I want to circle back to your nutrition. Are there things that are there any supplements or other things that you're taking additional to the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, I'm taking NMN, resveratrol, turmeric, natural anti-inflammatory, heavy doses of omega-3 fatty acids. Barry Sears has an excellent product. The Zone diet that Barry's popularized with 3 to 4 grams of omega-3 EPA DHA a day.
Is that what you're taking 3 to 4 grams a day?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also nitric oxide supplements.
Oh, tell me about that. I'm fascinated with nitric oxide.
Yeah.
Which ones are you using?
Well, let me get it for you just a minute.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a little break here while Joe is going to the other room to get his nitric oxide supplements. I'll be back in just a second. As we're recording this, there's a snowstorm where I am right now. We've probably gotten like a foot of snow in the last couple hours. Okay, Joe's back. What you got?
So this is the nitric oxide lozenges.
Oh yeah, right. That's I had him on the show, Dr. Nathan Bryant.
My good friend.
And how do you feel about the I love that we're going to talk about this because this is something that really fascinates me. The what's the duration of the effect of those lozenges versus drinking something that goes through the whole cycle, like beet or eating a lot of arugula?
Well, I do both. I eat.
Okay.
I love beets and organic beets in terms of, again, the nitric oxide, the vasodilatation, the vascular endothelial protection, and
right,
and all the stuff that goes with that. So, it's it purportedly enhances brain function in terms of, again, vascular endothelial growth factor, new blood vessels, vasodilatation, increased blood flow, all of the things like that. So it's, I believe shotgun approach. You say, well, did it work? I don't know what works. All I know is I'm still here at work having fun.
In the N of 1 study of Joe, it's working.
It's an N of 1. And
that's really, I mean, that's, people, Nathan has told me about their, I can go to a cardiologist and there's certain advanced tests I can do with this. Okay. But when it comes down to it, Joe, it's like, we're all N of 1 and we're all eating different things. Our biomes are different and all this stuff is different. And you just sort of like feel it out, like what it seems to be working,
Yeah. So. David, we both see the bullets going by every day. I'm getting a stiff neck from dodging the bullets. I mean, our friends, realistically speaking, I'm at 82. That's it. That's the average. I'm over the average now. And so I don't have any delusions. So I'll leave you with the three most important things in life.
Oh, please.
If I ask you, what are the three most important things in life? Think just a minute. You don't have to answer. Okay. Number one, mental and physical health. Number one. Without that, forget it. Number two is relationships with God, family, friends, and colleagues. Number three is carpe diem. We know not the day, nor the hour, nor the time. Having this discourse with you is energizing for me. It's a very pleasant way to get the day going. And I thank God that I'm able to sit here knowing my brain is still working at a reasonable way. And I can go swimming this afternoon at the local Y and have a good, healthy dinner with a little glass of wine tonight. So I'm thankful for it. I'm appreciative for everything I've been given, all the opportunities I've had, and the bullets I've dodged so far. So if tomorrow I pick up the paper and I see my name in the obituary, I will have run the good race, fought the good fight, and kept the faith.
That's beautiful. I've recently read that if we live our lives as if we've got a year to live, how much television would you watch? Not much.
That's right.
Joe, this has been delightful. I really appreciate your time. You're a huge role model. And I really appreciate your wisdom and your contributions to medical science.
Thank you, David. I'd love to get a copy of this. I could put on my website. How do I do that?
What happens is I connect you to Taylor, who's in our organization here, who makes all these things happen. And she will get you a copy of it. We will probably put this out. Again, that's a Taylor question sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. She's going to hit you up with a headshot.
How many listeners do you get? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think the last I checked, we're doing pretty well. I think we've hit 350,000 downloads. So
that many.
Good for you. Yeah, people like what we say. So good you had an impact today.
No, this has been a pretty high level discussion.
Well, we like to, raise the bar. Why lower it?
Yeah. Well, good luck with your downhill racing.
Thank you.
Be careful.
My
favorite time of skiing, I like to ski too, is when after the final run, I can bend over, take off my boots, and my knees still work. So be careful.
So that's what's going on outside my window.
My God, where are you?
I live in Park City, Utah.
Oh, you do?
I live like in a ski resort. Yeah.
Oh my Lord. I've been to Park City. What a beautiful area. Good for you.
Yeah. I walk to the lift. So that's fantastic. Okay.
Well, you're living it right too. So good luck.
Thank you.
And, I appreciate your opportunity here.
Yes. And I want to check in a year when you've had a follow-up with Aviv.
Yeah,
I'm very curious about the duration of the HBOT effect.
Yeah. Yep.
Super.
Okay, sir. Good luck.
Okay. Take care, Joe. Bye now. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show today. It's great to have you with us. We appreciate your time and your attention. You have the opportunity at this point to leave up to a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the program today. You can also leave us a comment. We love comments. And if you have any questions for me or Dr. Joe Maroon, hit me up, david@superage.com. I answer all of my emails directly and promptly. A big shout out to the sponsors who make this program possible. First, Timeline Nutrition with their breakthrough product, MitoPure, the first clinically proven urolithin A supplement. Check them out. Save 10% on your first order. There's a link down in the show notes. Also, Inside Tracker, the dashboard to your inner health. Don't guess on your inner health. Know what it is. Inside Tracker. Go to insidetracker.com/ageist. Save on all their products. And my favorite electrolyte mix, Element, LMNT. Go to drinklmnt.com/ageist. Get a free sample pack with your first order. I really like the citrus salt. That really works for me. Next week on The Week, continuing this theme of physicality, we have Dr. Max Testa. Max is an expert on performance sports medicine and what we can learn from those elite athletes that we can bring into our lives. That's next week on the Super Age Podcast. Until then, have a wonderful week. We'll see you then. Bye now.